our competitors have proven the price isn't going to be the motivator for operators. Just isn't. What's going to motivate operators is streamlining those operations.
Hey, James, it was a great interview we did today with Ben at Green Payments, and it kind of is a theme that carried through into your questions from the field. But this idea of building up a 1099 portfolio it's gotten a lot. I believe it's gotten short shrift in recent years.
It has. There's not been nearly as much paid attention, and I think the issue is there's a lot of changes that need to happen in order to really support an experienced 1099 rep. And the truth is, most of the big companies, as of late at least, haven't shown a big interest in making those shifts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Then tell us about the insiders.
We're talking about buy now, pay later. It's really on fire this year, and I think people will be really interested. And as James and I talk about, this is something that if you're out there and you're not partnered with somebody that's offering buy now, pay later, you should be looking into it.
Awesome. Well, in this particular episode, we do interview Ben with Green Payments. Green Payments is a paid consulting, a client of mine, a paid advertiser. And so in this episode, we never charge anybody to be on the podcast, but you could consider me a little bit biased here. And I really am in this case. And I say that truthfully because I went around and looked. I was in the market of like, hey, I need a sponsor that really focuses on individual 1099 experienced agents. I looked at the available ones that were out there. I just loved what Green Payments was doing. So I've been working with them for several months, and we're working on the program, and they already had such a fantastic program in place. And now we're getting ready to roll some really good resources out. So stay tuned for that. But again, it is a paid sponsor. But I think you're going to absolutely see why I chose to partner with them as we dive into this interview today. Hey, everybody. Patti and I are here today with Ben Ross, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Green Payments. How are you doing today, Ben?
Good. How are you both doing?
Fantastic. Doing wonderful.
Yeah. So I'm really excited for this particular interview. So I've been working with Green Payments and working with Ben and his partner to really kind of figure out what are these challenges that are facing 1099 agents, especially the kind of experienced bank card agents that we would think about that are out there and they're, beating the pavement or they've got their vertical or whatever it is. What are the challenges and what is it going to take for them to be competitive in the next 3, 5, 10 years as we move forward in the industry with all these trends and stuff? So we're going to discuss all of that today. Green Payments has had a lot of success in this area. But before we dive into that, Ben, give us your story. How did you end up in this crazy industry, and tell us about your journey to Green Payments?
For sure. So I definitely didn't start in payments. I don't think many
Few of us did.
Right. What's that?
Few of us did.
Yeah, that's it. I definitely wasn't one of them, but relatively early on in my career, ended up kind of falling into it. So I started out in franchising. I was with a very small kind of regional restaurant group. We ended up growing it internationally. I oversaw the franchise development from very early on, and then and kind of grew it to, we sold it, opened over 150 restaurants. In that process, we ended up actually acquiring our point of sale dealer. And so when we did that, suddenly I, being the guy that was in charge of growth and development and everything else, and it was, okay, how do we grow this, and learning about that whole side of the business. And so that was very point of sale heavy. The payment side, became more and more a part of it. But early on, it was very point of sale heavy. And then eventually we sold to private equity, and they took us public. And in that process, I ended up exiting after that. And at that point, I partnered up with my childhood best friend, Cliff Green, and we launched Green Payments. And, here we are today. So I had learned the payment side, the point of sale side. I really understood and realized, quite frankly, that was where the future was, that integrated technology. And so he had been, very specifically in payments and credit card processing. And I kind of had that point of sale side. So we came together and launched Green Payments.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's really interesting too, because right now the big trend, and I've said this so many times in the podcast, Patti, is, the winners are going to be those who can bring the 1099 distribution together with integrated payments, which right now those worlds have operated pretty much separately. So we're going to talk about that. But even before we get into too many specifics here, Ben, let's zoom out and talk about the trends or challenges that you see for the 1099. So for the agent that's out there, maybe they've been in the business for 2, 5, 10 years, whatever it is, 20 years, and they sell payment processing. That's their identity. What do you view as their biggest challenges today, and how have those kind of evolved over the last decade?
100%. So to me, the biggest challenge is sales support. And so where years ago, you go back 10 years ago, it was easy to sell, 20 terminals a month and very basic, merchants, and throw it on a countertop and run with it, right? The reality now is the sales process is just different. And so that sales support needs to be different. And while a lot of ISOs or processors will focus on support in the general sense with merchant support, sales support tends to fall to the side. And so, we've been very conscious of kind of taking a different, focus with that. But that's the reality of it. To us, you really need to have that sales support in order to drive business and have a sales process that focuses on technology in each step of the process.
Yeah, that's really important. Tell me, Ben, what trends are you seeing in the payments space that's going to impact the role of the 1099, say over the next 3 to 5 years, as they work to create, or shall I say, future-proof their portfolios?
100%. So it really comes down to the verticalization of technology. So the biggest piece going forward is people being experts at what they sell. So instead of just, hey, I do credit card processing and I'm here to sell you, it's got to be about, I'm here to improve your business, how you operate, and understand their business and take the time to learn it. If you're not an expert in restaurants, but you enjoy selling in restaurants, and maybe that's what you're focused on because of the community you're in, or maybe your network, learn about it. Talk to the operators, talk about their pain points, understand what their needs are in a deeper level than just how much money can I save in payment processing? Because the reality is our competitors have proven the price isn't going to be the motivator for operators. Just isn't. What's going to motivate operators is streamlining those operations, because at the end of the day, the toughest thing for an operator today is staffing. It's not saving 10 basis points or 50 basis points or even all of their processing fees. It's getting servers and bartenders, and that's just in the restaurant world. But in general, to future-proof it, Patti, to your point, I think it really comes down to that vertical technology.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you make there, and especially for the 1099, right? Because they have to create that they have to become experts, far more so than the W-2s, because the W-2s are sort of like finding their way around, right? That's my way of thinking. Whereas the 1099 is somebody that's like, this is my business, and I'm going to become the expert, and I'm going to be the person.
Agreed. And from my view and from what we see, the 1099 has an easier advantage of doing it too, because at the end of the day, they can brand themselves their own way. They can be that industry expert and consultant, or, they can give themselves any title they want, right? Whereas a W-2 sales rep, whether for Green Payments or for anyone else, at the end of the day, they work for that payments company, right? So it's very clear you're here to sell payments. Whereas our 1099 agents and partners are able to go out and say, hey, I'm a consultant, I focus on automotive. I handle, automotive, right? Or I do restaurants, or I do retail, or I do pharmacies, or I do, dental practices. And, I have a, great base and network in dental practices. And now I'm going to just go after that, because guess what? You can build a great portfolio of just dental practices, and then and live it, learn it, love it, and have a ton of fun, right? And so that, to me, by doing that as a 1099 agent, you have the advantage a W-2 agent, and you have the advantage that W-2 sales rep doesn't have.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I think on the W-2 side, it's like they kind of have all of this infrastructure built in. That can be good, because it's like, oh, we have this IT department, I have all this support. But then it also can be restrictive, because it's like, but I have to do what I'm told, and I have this. So I think there's offsets on both sides, and which really leads us into the next question I had for you, Ben, which is, these 1099s, I think most 1099s listening to this discussion are going to be like, I agree, right? I want to build a vertical specific portfolio. But I think one of the challenges you already brought up was sales support. And when we think about upstream partners, the truth is most of the upstream partners that have a big team of 1099s, they have certainly never adjusted their support system to be vertical specific. So talk about what are these agents? What are they looking for? What do they need today from their partner, from their upstream partner that's actually doing the work of the processing and everything? What are they looking for?
I would say, if I were to put a word on it, I would say reliability. And what I mean by that is they need to know that they can rely on that upstream partner when they're out there in the field and knocking on doors, whether they're, whatever type of business they're going after, if it's a deli, a restaurant, a dealership. Either way, when they knock on that door and they say, hey, I've got these statements, I've got this opportunity, they need to know that they can then go after it. And they need to know that they're going to have the solution to get through the sales process and not get stuck at, oh, well, we have this integrated, point of sale, and can you integrate with it? Or we want this integrated solution. Do you offer it? And so, that to us is really the key thing. So I'd say, it's reliability and support, and knowing when they're in the field and when they're knocking on doors that they can pick up the phone, call, get someone to help them through the process, identify the right solution if they don't already know what it is because they haven't maybe dealt with that market before. And then be able to demo it, be able to kind of walk through the whole process with them.
Right. Yeah, I like that. I think, you say reliable. I love that word, reliability. I think another word I would put on it would be partnership, right?
Yeah.
Because I think in the past, it was much more, the view of the 1099 historically has been vendor.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like my processor is my vendor. They just happen to provide a service that I offer my clients in whatever way I choose. But now it's got to be, well, wait a minute. I know I don't only need payment processing. I now need a technology solution. I need support for that technology solution. I need help installing that technology solution, right? And I need it to all be seamless. And so I think it's kind of, they're now getting into the stage where they need partnership. So let's talk about Green Payments for a minute. I've been really impressed with what you guys have done. You and Cliff have really built a really great team of 1099s, a team that's growing, submission count is increasing, which is actually a little bit unusual right now. Most of the larger companies out there, their 1099 is kind of dwindling as they put more focus on direct ISV deals. But you guys have been growing on the 1099 side. How is that? What are you doing to drive growth there?
So I think it starts with who we align ourselves with. So one thing that Cliff and I talk about often is we want to focus on those who are experienced, that just are simply looking for better support and better access to the technology and the tools that we have and can provide to them. Right. So to your point, James, a lot of the upstream partners that have been out there for many years and have worked with these 1099 agents and the ones that we work with every day. They've shifted their focus. Whatever their business decisions and reasons are, their focus has shifted. So those agents kind of feel left alone. They feel like, look, we built these great companies and they helped to be a part of building them. And now they're just kind of out on their own. And sure, they in many cases have great portfolios they built there, but they're not able to keep growing it. And it's just become a stagnant thing. And so for those who want growth and want new opportunity, what we do that kind of helps them a ton is by providing those solutions based on the industry. So they can reach out and say, hey, I've got a restaurant, but even if it's a restaurant, are you fast casual? Are you fine dining? Are you a bar? Each one of those needs a different solution. So at the end of the day, I can't just provide one point of sale solution and say, this is great for everyone. Because in the end, the operator is going to make that choice. And sure, we could sell them, we could convince them of it. But at the end of the day, once we install it and they're utilizing it, they're never going to keep it long term if it's not truly the right solution. So that's, I think, one of the really key things is providing that kind of list of solutions and that ability for an agent to make a quick phone call, go into our support docs, pull that information, access it, and run with it when they're selling. And we have an integrations desk that they can reach out to. So outside of the solutions that we generally put out there and offer ourselves, right? The reality is there's hundreds and thousands of others that we can integrate with, but can we integrate? And that's always the question, right? And so we have a process internally where they can reach out to our team. We'll do that research for them. We'll dig in and make sure that they have the answers that they need, rather than them having to try to dig it up on their own and make phone calls and all that kind of stuff. And waste time, quite frankly, that they could be out selling, just trying to figure out, can I go work with this merchant? We tell them, look, jump to the next merchant, keep rolling, keep knocking on doors, let us do that research and we'll get back to you and confirm. And then the other big piece of it, which again, I think is something that's fallen off with a lot of other upstream partners that have been out there, is support. And our support is 24/7. So we built our own in-house 24/7 support. If you need something, you call in after hours. They're trained by me and our team here. They know, they're not, right. it's not going directly to the acquirer or whatever. The calls are coming to our office so that we can address whatever the needs are. And I think that's another thing that both on the sales side and then what falls into the support side is a big piece of it.
Yeah.
And one big thing we always joke about internally is, as an ISO, we're an independent sales organization, right? The reality is we view it as an independent support organization, because at the end of the day, we're here to support, whether it be our merchants or most importantly, our agents. That's what we need to do. Because if we support our agents, everything else falls into place. And so that's, I think the main, points.
One follow-up question I have to that I think is kind of interesting. We both touched on it a couple of times here. I think it's no secret that, the vast majority of the industry, in terms of, you look at the big companies that were built on the back of 1099 distribution, most of them have either completely stopped with 1099 channel, or they have kept all the legacy processes in place, but they're milking kind of that 1099 channel to fund their move into the ISV. What's fueling the shift, and why aren't you guys? And it's very obvious to me in working with you guys that you're like all in on the 1099. That's your distribution channel. That's what you're forming everything around that. Why are you doing that versus kind of what a lot of the other players are doing?
For sure. So I think a lot of it comes down to just our approach to business more than anything else. So, Cliff, who's my partner, started out as a 1099 agent himself, right? And then built an ISO, grew it, and then went independent, and he and I partnered up at that point. And he understood fully what it took to be successful and the value that it could bring to himself, his family, and everyone around him, right? And so to us, that's what we see. And I will say, for me personally, also coming from the franchise world, as a franchisor, you're able to help people build a business, grow a business, and do amazing things, right? And so to me, our business is obviously not a franchise, right? But it's similar in that way, where we're able to work with our 1099 agents that build their own business and their portfolio, and go out there and make a big impact in their community. And so to us, that's the amazing reward. I feel a big reason why it shifted elsewhere is because, quite frankly, there's been a ton of capital, a ton of investment, companies going public and raising money that just drives other decisions. Look, a 1099 sales channel is not the least expensive sales channel, right? At the end of the day, sure, maybe up front it's less capital intensive, but the reality is long term it's way more expensive. So for these other companies that have raised capital and brought money in, at the end they just look at it and say, you know what, I can burn out my agents, and then all of that revenue that I'm paying them is mine. And so to us, that's just not good business. That's not the way to develop relationships or to maintain relationships. And so but I think that's a big part of it, right? Is you've got a lot of this outside capital that's come into our industry, and it's shifted people's value and what they value, or their value propositions and what they value.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the outside capital thing. That is really interesting. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective, but it's true, because a lot of times the outside capital, the other thing they'll look at is 1099 is just a very complex model. And it's like deceptive, because you look at it, like you said, and it's like, oh, the upfront cost is zero, sort of, but not really, because you got to recruit, and you have to have recruiters, and you have to train, and you have to have all, and you got to fly them out and talk to them, and whatever it is, there's all these hidden costs. But then it's like, what's our return going to be? And so figuring out things like cost of acquisition, cost of acquiring a new merchant account, it's actually really difficult to quantify that. And I think private equity firms especially, they want things that are quantifiable. So they look at an ISV and they're like, oh, well, our cost of acquisition is $1,237.59 through Facebook ads and Google pay-per-click and whatever else. Let's just dump $4 million into that. I don't know about this 1099 thing. And I think there's kind of been this uncertainty where the outside capital is kind of like, I don't know about that. Right. And so that's interesting.
And it's a lot more to manage, right? At the end of the day, if I have W-2 staff, they have to show up, they're on payroll, right? You're managing it very closely and very tightly. And so I think that's the other big piece. When there's outside capital, to your point, they want to be able to not just manage it and define the ROI, but also manage it day in, day out. And I think that's the other big piece, that, look, having a 1099 sales force and agent base, it can be complicated at times, right? Different people come from with different expectations and different backgrounds and experiences, and you have to measure all of that differently. Whereas you build a W-2 sales force, you can set a very strict criteria. We're only hiring this person if they fit this defined box. And now your team fits that defined box. Whereas 1099 is very different. To us, that's what's exciting. And, look, Cliff and I bootstrapped, everything ourselves from day one. And so we don't have that outside capital. We don't have that person on our back and that outside investor that's telling us what to do. At the end of the day, we get to do business with people we want to do business with. And at times there's some we don't, we get that choice, right? Whereas, also in a W-2 environment, it's also a lot tougher, right? You bring someone in and they make a big impact, but for whatever reason, you don't want them there. It's always, it's also a lot harder to make those choices about who you work with. So, I think that's really our key thing too.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, so let's turn this and get like super practical here. So, it sounds rosy to say you have really good support, right? Everybody says that. It sounds exciting to talk about how 1099 should focus on verticals and selling technology, but let's bring it down where the rubber meets the road. Like, what does that actually look like? So I'm a 1099. I'm currently going kind of scattershot. I keep hearing James and Patti talking about verticalization every week. And I'm like, yes, I want to do that. And maybe I have a vertical in mind that I want to go after. Why would I partner with Green Payments, and how do you guys work with your partners? How is your support actually different to enable me to be able as a 1099 to go after these verticals and be successful that way?
For sure. So it starts really in the beginning, and it starts in the knowledge and training that the agents get. So we have a monthly training that they're able to access, and we built it around around each set of technology. So every month it's a different rollout that we do. And we split it out by solution, right? So if it's whatever that vertical is, they're able to get knowledge on it. So to your point, if they want to learn about pharmacies and how we go after pharmacies, they can learn about that. If they want to learn about restaurants and how we go after restaurants, they can learn about that. And the other side of it is, for us, even the implementation side. So once they sell it, how we implement is also built that way. So we have separated our team out. Who's handling gateways and terminals? Who's handling the full point of sale in that certain industry? It's built so that we can then bring in, on the restaurant side, person overseeing our restaurant point of sale implementations has restaurant background and knowledge. So it's not just someone that understands the tech or understands payments, but they truly understand restaurants and what the operators need, so that when things come up, they can talk the lingo, they understand it. On the automotive side, we've got a team that has automotive experience and can handle and understand the lingo and how dealers work and what dealers are looking for. And so that is really a big piece of it. And then the other way that we make it easier for our agents really is, we have a no upfront cost, program for point of sale and terminals. So it gives them the ability to break through some of those barriers that otherwise they would be falling into if they were, you got to walk in and this restaurant needs $15,000 worth of equipment. It can be a tougher sell than walking in saying, hey, we've got a program. Here's what the numbers look like. Here's what we can do for you. And it's not going to cost you anything up front. So that's another big piece. We also, another big part of what we do is our road warrior team, is what we call it. And basically, we have a big opportunity. It's a basic terminal. At the end of the day, ship the terminal like anyone else. Get the merchant on the phone or get the agent on the phone if they're active and able to go do the install themselves. Otherwise, we'll get on the phone with the merchant directly ourselves, walk them through going live, and let the agent know, counts up, you're good to go. Right? It's pretty traditional. One of the other pieces that we do at no real cost to the agent, we will send our team out for the install. Our in-house team going on site to be there, spend up to a week, whatever it really takes at any given point, depending on the opportunity, to make sure it's not just a successful, hey, we plugged in the terminal, but the next day, once they're live, if they're doing a dual price program, does the staff and the employees, do they understand the lingo and how to deal with staff when they come through the door and start questioning them? Most of the time they don't. And that's where, from what we found early on, that's where a lot of things fell off, right? It wasn't that we couldn't get the owner on board or the GM or the kind of the key point of contact. Where things always would go sideways, and I believe anywhere would go sideways, is with the employees, right? And them kind of voicing concern about dual price or how the point of sale operates different than what they had previously. And so we have our team there on site throughout that go live to make sure it's a smooth, it's a smooth go live, and that there's good solid retention and a relationship built with that merchant.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, that's really great. Okay, so tell me, then, for the experienced 1099 agent who's out there listening today, what would be the top, say, 1 or 2 tips that you could share in terms of what other successful agents are doing and how they can sort of set themselves up for even greater success in 2024.
For sure. So it kind of ties back to some of the stuff we've talked about previously, but to me, it would be picking 1, 2, maybe 3 industries you want to go after. Don't feel like you need to be the expert on every type of industry, because, you know, and our team will kind of joke internally because we've got all these different industry verticals that we support, and there's a plethora of them. But the reality is that's because each agent's going to have their own type of industry they want to go after. Some may want to go after dental practices because maybe they're a retired dentist, or their family, you know, one of their parents or siblings is in that world. Maybe they want to go after pharmacies or car dealerships, or they want to go after auto body repair shops. Like, everyone's going to have their own focus that they want for various reasons. Pick that 1, 2, or 3 and just go all in, because what we see, the most profitable, strongest, most stable, and most valuable portfolios are built that way. When you've got integrated technology with great support, great service, and I will say a great salesperson, right? That's that relationship manager that's coddling them and keeping them on board. And when something comes up that's just not perfect because they got a charge back and they didn't feel like they should have got a charge back, but there's a voice there to talk them through it, explain it, and make sure that they're comfortable. At the end of the day, that builds the strongest, most sustainable, and most valuable portfolio. So to me, that's really the way to build a future-proof portfolio, is to have that tech nice and tight.
That's really important. That's really good. I really like that. Okay, so before we wrap up today, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what it means to partner with Green Payments, what type of partners you're looking for, and, you know, where agents can go to learn more about the company.
For sure. So partnering, you know, with us means a true partnership. So, you know, we said it throughout, you know, I said it throughout, but at the end of the day, we value the relationships and the partnerships that with our agents, and it's a true partnership. If they need, you know, a certain type of technology, or they have a certain vertical they want to go after, maybe it's a vertical that we haven't seen. It'd be pretty rare, but maybe it's some niche-y thing. Let us be the one to dig in and handle that for you while you go after building relationships and selling, and we'll be that partner for you. So that's a big part of it. And our goal will be to sit down, put together a plan that says, look, do you want to be a $5,000 a month residual, $10,000? You know, where do you want to get to in your own life? What are your goals for your family, for yourself? And we'll sit down and put a true plan together that step by step lays out how you're going to get there. How many accounts do you need to go after? How many accounts do you need to board? What do those look like? What's the technology you need to become an expert on? We'll get you scheduled with some demos so you can learn about that tech and really dig in and learn the business. And then from that, you know, we're confident you'll hit those goals, and we see it, you know, we see it constantly. So the other thing I'll say is that, you know, those who are looking for are experienced agents that have been out there. Maybe their upstream partner has been acquired, things have changed, dynamics different than what it was, maybe management's changed, or maybe they're just looking to see what other options are out there. They may want to secure themselves. Hey, they've got this one solid portfolio here, and they just want to build another portfolio to balance things out and not have everything all in with this one company, because they've heard the horror stories and things that unfortunately have happened across our industry over the last several years, and they want to, you know, protect themselves a little bit, right? So that happens a ton as well. So any of those people that they may, you know, regardless of where they're at in their journey, they've got some knowledge, they've got some experience, they understand. Maybe James and Patty, they've been listening to you guys and you know the business, but want some extra support to guide them along the way. We'd love to have them reach out. Our website's greenpayments.io. You can also email partners@greenpayments.io, or go to earnaresidual.com and learn more about what we do and how we do it. And we'd be happy to connect you with some of our other agent partners that have been successful, have done it, and get their perspective. Because look, our view is that we're all community. We're in this together, and to build a great company and keep doing it.
It's greenpayments.io, right? Was the URL?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yes.
That's exactly right.
Ben, it's such a pleasure having you on the podcast. Really appreciate your insights. Congratulations on your success working with these 1099s, and of course, wish you continued success out there.
No doubt. Appreciate it, James and Patty. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Patty, in questions from the field today, I really want to touch on my work with Green Payments, and more specifically, what I believe processors need to do today if they want to be successful with 1099 agents. I touched on it at the very beginning of the podcast. Of course, I do have an active consulting relationship with Green Payments, and I take my reputation very seriously. It's my most valuable asset.
Of
And
course.
so I was looking around. I had, some different sponsors that I had for a long time, and contracts ended. And so I was kind of like, who do I want to work with? And a lot of different companies that would love to have me kind of promote them and bring to the audience. And what I was looking for was a couple things, and I want to touch on each of those just really quickly. We talked about it a little bit with Ben a second ago, but I think it's so crucial for those out there to understand. So the number one thing I was looking for was, I wanted to be able to promote for the experienced individual 1099 agent. I wanted to find a company that had built their business around vertical specific, right? So everything from the training, from the technology, having that matrix of like, here are, like, I had Green Payments actually send me a matrix when we started working together of like, which industries and which solutions do you have for which industries? And we talked through each of those and said, well, is there one we need to add? Or, well, what about this company? If you talk to that, you know what I mean? And just making sure that we've got all of the right, all the core verticals covered where we have that solution. And then the next part of it was, to me, was the true partnership. And we touched on that quite a bit in the interview, but things like, for instance, with Green Payments, where they're, when a new agent is calling and they're actually like, going to move forward, they'll literally pay to fly them out to their office to talk through with them and say, okay, what do you need? Do you need capital? Right? Do you need a free placement program? How are we going to handle when you go to sell a merchant and they need $20,000 worth of point of sale equipment for free?
Right.
How are we going to finance that? What's the Schedule A going to look like? All of these things, that real actual partnership, again, not, from a financial perspective, from a support perspective. He mentioned their Road Warrior team. When he told me that, it's funny because actually when they said that, because I had like 4 companies on my list that I thought were good for the individual 1099 experienced agent. And, but when I talked to Green Payments, and they're like, yeah, we, routinely we have different teams, and if we get a big merchant account that's got a lot of locations, or they need a big point of sale, we just send a team out to do the install from our office. We'll fly them out there. And I'm like, what?
Wow. Like how many people do that, right?
There we go. Like, that's what I'm talking, why? Because again, not because that's not a crazy expense. That is a cost of acquisition today. If you, if you're an agent and you're going out there and you're selling some big account and it's going to generate $2,000-3,000 a month in residual for the next however many years, it totally makes sense for the processor to have a team go out and do the install. It totally makes sense for the processor to put up the $15,000 in hardware costs and take that back from residuals over time, or whatever is worked out. Those things are crucial, because ultimately I always say that, 1099 agents care about getting, they care about the commission and they care about the Schedule A, but the only thing they care about more than that is just getting a yes, right? If I know I can get a yes, and I'm actually going to get a deal done where I otherwise wouldn't, well, that's really, really valuable. And so, of course, I wanted a company like Green Payments that has very aggressive Schedule A's and aggressive residual splits and lifetime vested, and, checking all these boxes. But to me, almost more important than that was, do they have this legitimate vertical specific company structure, not just lip service, but like they actually have like departments predicated on different verticals and different solutions and different servicing and things of that nature. And then also, do they have the partnership to back it up to where when the 1099 comes in, hey, here's this deal, they're able to actually facilitate and get that deal done and make it happen. To me, that is just absolutely crucial. You've got to have those things. One of the other things I wanted to point out too is, you also, as somebody going after 1099s, you've got to have the technology for the agent and the ISO, not just for the merchant, right? A lot of ISOs are focused on, well, hey, guess what? We now have a great solution. Well, yeah, but what does the application and onboarding process look like, right? And, I was asking Green Payments about that. Show me that. And it's like, oh, it's a really simple one-step app online, the way it should be. It's a PayFac-like experience. That's what it should be, right? For all of the solutions, they're all under this one underwriting platform, So to me, when I'm looking for a partner today, now, today when I'm thinking about a partnership, I'm thinking of, who do I want to send the next 1,000 1099 agents to over the next 3 years, it's a big deal to me. Like, I want to find that right partnership. And it's easy for me to, it'd be easy for me to go, oh yeah, well, what's the highest bidder, but
but you don't want to really do that, because that diminishes your esteem.
Right. And it's like my reputation, I want to protect that. And so
Mhm.
when I'm looking for a company, I think what I'm looking for, I believe, I hope, is what 1099s are looking for as well, because I talked to so many of them. And
Right.
I think if you're out there right now and you're like, hey, we're trying to build a team of 1099s, I would say make sure it's a real partnership. Make sure you're willing to make those financial investments. And again, you can structure that a lot of different ways. You don't have just, Ben's not saying, oh, we just give the equipment away for free and we never try to get any of the money back or share that burden with the agent. It's just, you got to provide the financing. You got to provide the capital. Like, you got to be able to cover the cost of acquisition, and you got to be vertical specific in your approach to make sure you have the right solution for the right vertical, and you have the support necessary to really make that verticalization happen and realize that in a practical way for that 1099 that's out in the field. So all that to say, obviously, again, I really do support Green Payments. This podcast obviously is a bit of a plug for them, but I think there's a reason that I partnered with them, and hopefully you all got to see that in the interview we just did. But I'm really, really excited about it. If you're an experienced 1099 agent, it would be a huge personal favor to me if you would reach out and just have a conversation, see if there's some synergy there. Again, it's greenpayments.io. Go check it out and let them know that James Shepard and Patti Murphy sent you from the podcast.
James, buy now, pay later has been on fire this holiday season. Yes. Adobe Analytics reports that retailers rang up $7.3 billion.
Wow.
Dollars in buy now, pay later transactions just between the 1st and the 26th of November.
What?
Yes.
That's crazy. Wow. I had no idea the numbers were that high. I knew it was going well. I didn't realize it was that big. That's not even Black Friday. That's crazy.
I know, right? I mean, that's not even, it's like up to, actually, I'm looking at my calendar. I have to turn around for a second. I think it did include it included all the way up to Cyber Monday.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So that's right. The 22nd that was Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
So Black Friday.
Still though, 7.8, I think it was only like 9 point, what was the number for, I can't remember what it was for online sales. I was looking at it. Anyway, but yeah, that's a huge number. Huge
number. And of course, most of these are online, obviously.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. And of course, that's what Adobe Analytics does. But, to put this in perspective, I was thinking about this when I was, writing, I wrote up a piece on it for the Green Sheet. And I was thinking about it that back in the 90s, the 1990s, that is, for those who are young.
I think we knew that, Patti. We know you've been in the industry a while, but
just in case.
No.
Yeah. I'm not that old, people, right? Back in the 1990s and the early 2000s, we used to compile at the Green Sheet a list of billion-dollar acquirers. And when I took over the task in the late 90s, $7 billion was a respectable yearly total value of transactions.
Right.
Now we're talking about in 1 month, one type of credit product.
Right.
Remarkable. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. Adobe expects that when all is said and done, consumers will choose the pay later option for $17 billion in purchases this holiday season.
Wow.
Now, that's because the season, and just to put this in perspective, the season, quote unquote, for Adobe's purposes is October 1st through December 31st. So,
right. Okay. Got it.
That's 3 months.
Yeah.
Now, consumers like buy now, pay later because, as they've told numerous pollsters, they're drawn to the repayment terms, the budgeting benefits, and the cost. Because basically, it costs nothing if you pay it back in the installments as as you agree to. And according to research by Motley Fool, just to sort of put this in perspective, 35% of Americans have used buy now, pay later this year.
Oh, this year already?
Just this year.
Wow, that's a huge number. Yeah,
that's a huge number, and I have to admit, I'm one of them.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I did it mostly because I wanted to see how it worked.
Yeah. Well, remember I said I did that with
you did it with furniture or something, didn't you?
No, it was last year. I did I was getting airline tickets with Southwest to fly my whole family out. And it was one of those things where it was like, I don't know, it was maybe $7,000 or something like that. And it was one of those things where I'm like, well, I don't want to use my debit card or my credit card. They both have a single transaction limit. It was like 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
And I was like, oh, there's a buy now, pay later option. Okay. Instead of me calling and trying to get a limit on the one transaction, like maybe I'll just go ahead and do this on buy now, pay later. And it was actually a really cool experience. I thought it was great. So.
Yeah. I used it because, I like to buy tools for doing landscaping and gardening, because those are things I really like. Okay. And there was, there's one thing that I wanted. It was a special kind of mulcher. And it was like, yeah, I could put it on my credit card.
Right.
But wouldn't it be really cool just to pay it off every other week?
Yeah.
And I didn't even notice it. It was almost a nit on my checking account. In fact, when I saw it when I would check my balance, it's like, what was that $20 thing for, or whatever $50 thing for, right?
Yeah.
So, but it is true that there are some folks who probably should not be buying and paying later.
Sure.
And it shows, because 1 in 3 buy now, pay later customers at risk, who say that they're at risk of not being able to cover their basic financial needs, had used buy now, pay later in the previous 90 days, according to a survey that was done by JD Power. I believe it was in September or October.
Sure.
And about 1 in 4 have missed or made payments late. And of course, that's when the fees kick in. So it's not cheap anymore, right?
But, sure.
But there are a lot of folks like you and I who are not financially fragile, who borrow to borrow a term from the New York Fed, report by the New York Fed, who like this. And just as you and I just discussed, there's just certain ways.
Convenience aspect. Yeah, there's certain situations where it's a really good fit.
Yeah, I really think so. And I think, I saw in the JD Power research, 1 in 4 people who consider themselves well-heeled, that is, they have no trouble covering their basic financial needs, had used it in the previous 90 days.
Right.
And, they say, like the biggest reason that consumers gave for liking this is the repayment terms. It's just a lot easier than building up your credit card. I know with me, I like to pay off my credit card balances every month, but sometimes I get a little behind. And I hate the idea of paying 21% interest on an impulse purchase, right?
For sure. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah. So Morning Consult studied the market and found an overwhelming majority, 69%, are Gen Z adults and millennials who are characterized as mid to high income individuals. So that's pretty interesting right there. The one thing I would say is, as Morning Consult pointed out, you got to be careful about these people that are in fragile financial health. Because if this spins out of control,
you'll have overregulation and things like that will come in. And I mean, I think the other interesting thing for our audience, of course, is that, this is an opportunity. I mean, there's definitely a lot of different companies out there. We've had different ones on the podcast where they now have reseller programs. A lot of the BNPLs now have reseller programs where they integrate in. And so there's different ones to look into, but I think this is an opportunity. Yeah. It's something where if you think about that much revenue at stake, the question is, are your merchants getting a cut of that 7.8 billion? Are they able to offer buy now, pay later? And if not, it's probably time to start looking for a partner.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that. And then also when you think about the margins are huge.
Yeah.
In terms of what merchants are willing to pay.
Absolutely. Because they know they're getting revenue that they otherwise wouldn't get. That's the thing. It's just like DoorDash or Uber Eats, when they're paying 25, 30, 35% because they know this is an order that's coming from DoorDash, that if it didn't come, if they're not on DoorDash, then that person's going to order something else from DoorDash. Exactly. So this is revenue they otherwise wouldn't get. Same thing with BNPL. They're willing to pay a really high rate to the BNPL provider to finance it because they know, hey, this person, if they didn't have BNPL available, they probably wouldn't buy that mower, or they probably wouldn't buy that, flat screen TV or whatever it is. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, exactly.
So, yeah.
Good stuff, Patty. Thanks for the update.
Sure thing.